Welcome to Exiles, a Gospel of Mark podcast. We're coming to you from Grace Church in Erie, Pennsylvania, where we're going to be having discussions about ancient truth and the person of Jesus and how we take that into our daily life. You can go to whoisgrace.com/Mark for the sermons and resources that we'll be referring to during this podcast. Watching and listening to that sermon is a great way to know what we're talking about as we move forward. So we're going to start by introducing the panel today. My name is Danielle Hartland. I'll be your host through this journey. I am married to Dave, and we have a son, Dax, who just started kindergarten. I have been in ministry in some capacity since 1999. We don't have to do the ages of that.
You just aged yourself.
No kidding. Well, I actually did start young, but whatever. I'm an Enneagram 5, so that will tell you all you need to know about me. Let's go around the horn. Mike.
My name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors here at Grace. I've been in this role for about a year and a half. I have a beautiful wife, Emily, 2 daughters. Sophia's almost 4. Isabel's almost 2, so that tells you what my home life is like.
That's your whole life, yeah.
Speaking of discipleship failure.
Yeah. It's funny because it's... in any case, I'm an Enneagram 3, and the only way I remember them is by their negative connotation. So
of course.
A 3 is a competitive jerk. Wow. That's what I am.
Wow. Okay. Derek.
I'm Derek. I've been at Grace for 32 years, so I'm probably the only one that outlasts you, Danielle.
For sure.
Married to Kim. We've been married for... I've been at Grace. I've been married for 32 years.
Grace.
I made a mistake there. I've been married for 32 years. I've been at Grace for almost 30, 29-ish.
Well, you beat me with your marriage and your ministry,
Yeah,
so great.
Boom. And I have 3 kids. They're all big now. And I'm an Enneagram 3 too, so you just called me some names when you announced yourself.
Yeah, we both are. It makes sense.
I prefer achiever.
Oh, the positive.
Yeah, the positive.
Yeah, that's you're into.
Competitive jerk.
That's what you're into. He nestles into the negative. Right, yeah. That's where he finds his strength. Yikes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. My name is Steven. I am also been here at Grace for 3.5 years. I told you last week I came in during COVID, so that was not a fun time. Speaking of competitive jerks, I felt like one, even though I'm not a 3. I'm an 8. I am the resident Scotsman at Grace, and people like to make fun of how I talk, so enjoy that.
Yeah, enjoy his dulcet tones. You're welcome. It's one of the reasons he made it.
It's the only reason I'm on this podcast.
Actually, 2 of you, we like to make fun of the way you talk. You too, my sir, and your weird phrases.
Mike,
so
yeah,
you're the weird ones.
We'll see. Please
if this
submit
was on
a comment.
video, then you would see you're sandwiched between us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
we are.
yeah.
And the colors, too.
Hopefully we're not affected.
Oh, I hope not. Well, if we made it through some of the stuff we made it through, we'll be fine.
It's true.
All right, so let's start. Derek, I'd like you to start. Just give us a quick overview of this sermon, kind of your outline and where you were headed.
Yeah, sure. So we're still at the very beginning of Mark. So we're in verses 2 through 8, and so we're introduced to John the Baptist, and we see this kind of weird figure that's pointing the way to Jesus and introducing us to Jesus. And so we kind of picked up on that welcoming theme. He was welcoming Jesus into ministry, and here we are positioned kind of at the beginning of fall. We're welcoming a new year for many people, a new ministry year, a new school year, and just saying how do we welcome Jesus into our life as we approach this new year. And so really we just talked about some expectation adjustments, because Jesus kind of, his kingdom came into the world's kingdom, and the two couldn't be more different. And John, the initial announcer, couldn't be more of an unusual character. And so we just get all of this kind of like weird introductory stuff to go, man, this is a totally different kind of kingdom, totally different kind of power, different definition of greatness. And we start to get kind of introduced to all of those themes. And so I really kind of centered my sermon around this 3 expectation adjustments that we need to make as we think about welcoming Jesus in to this new year. So I talked about Jesus isn't looking for perfect people. And obviously we get some of that example through John the Baptist. Jesus desires confession and not triumph. And so again, one of these initial themes is just that, that we go right into the baptism. people came repenting, they came confessing sins, and I just think that's the perfect way to approach when God comes to earth and comes into your life. That it's not a prideful, like, here are all my trophies, aren't you lucky to have me? It's more of a, here's me and all my brokenness. I don't deserve you, but thank you for being my savior.
So less like an Enneagram 3 and more like an Enneagram 5.
Well, I mean,
Ironically.
Yeah, okay. Keep going. Just want to not to interrupt. But.
The third one was Jesus measures greatness by humility.
Whoops.
And so,
Speaking of which,
boom, right back on you.
Yeah.
And so, this is really the part of the passage where, John basically says, I'm the one mightier than I is coming. I'm unworthy to tie his sandals, kind of thing. So it's a really kind of beautiful picture of just the humble way that really this story that we all find ourselves a part of is a story of Jesus, and it's not a story of us. And John recognized right from the gun here that he, I mean, you think about the temptation for John the Baptist, a guy who grew up pretty humbly, pretty poor, pretty nobody, and all of a sudden people are coming from everywhere to see him and his ministry and hear him preach, and he's baptized, and he's the center of attention. And for him to just consistently say, guys, it is not about me. And I think he provides such a model for us to kind of to walk through our lives. That this isn't. It's so easy for us to get caught up into this is my story. This is my, my reputation. This is I've got to guard and protect all of these things, and to recognize that really the story that's being written is the story of Jesus, and I just get to contribute to it and point people to him.
Yeah. That's
So
good.
that's kind of the point of the message.
That's great. I loved the illustration you used about the picture. Like you're looking at a picture and someone's like, look at this picture of me. And you just go past them to this bush. Like, no, wait, no. That's
Get back to the main
Yeah,
subject
get back to the main subject of the picture. That was really cool. So out of those 3 expectation adjustments, not looking for perfect people, desiring confession, and measuring greatness through humility, what resonates with you personally the most out of one of those 3, you guys? Anyone?
I think the measuring greatness through humility, both from a micro and a macro level. So the individually, I mean, Jesus, and you kind of prefaced later we'll get into spoiler alert. Jesus washes his disciples' feet, but that's still such a jarring thought. Or when you see someone do it, that's still so jarring, and that's the sense that John the Baptist had, and that's the sense that Jesus, despite being God, also brought into. And so on a micro level, just it jarring, I guess, is the word that keeps coming to mind. But also on a macro level, because you talked about King of Kings, right? Caesar was the Roman Empire, the size and scope, and this kingdom that's far more powerful, that's going to grow far more, that's going to be eternal, comes with such small, humble beginnings. And there's all kind of correlations that I can pull myself to modern day from that, but just the humility is just so jarring, and boy, we just don't see it like that.
and I think about how culturally offensive that act was.
That's good.
Yeah.
That John the Baptist would mention it, and then Jesus would then go on to act in that way. This is reserved for the least, the lowest of the low. And so there is this cultural offensiveness about it where people are just literally shocked. They're taken back by this act. So, but for me, it's this confessional piece, I think stands out to me the most, especially in light of what they had in mind. If you think about a Jewish nation under such oppression for so long, and this Messiah idea, prepare the way of the Lord, that they're expecting this conqueror, yet that's not what John's saying. John's saying it starts with confession. It doesn't start with military act. It starts with confession. So obviously confession and humility, they go hand in hand with each other. Yeah. But that just stands out to me that even, I can't put myself as a first century Jewish person, but to try and do that, even to hear those words, it's no surprise he ends up in jail because of this offensive message that the Pharisees and the Sadducees just could not wrap their head around. Why would it start with why would it start with confession? This idea of purity, preparing yourself for the Lord to come rather than the Messiah coming to take over and free them again, from this rule and reign that they've been under.
Yeah, I feel like we do that now. Like, we think we have such a better way to influence culture, influence the people around us, and rarely does it present as humility, confession, sacrifice, all the things that Jesus was about. I loved how you, Derek, you said your summary, I think, of Corinthians, you said God chose the weak things in the world to shame the strong. And that just upside down kingdom thought. Yeah. So thinking through that lens and what you guys just shared, like, how does that impact our interaction in the world? Like, what Christendom is perceived as, or individuals, or like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there's a real challenge when it comes. I mean, even just hearing both of you guys talk about it, it sounds nice in theory, but there's a rubber meets the road element to humility. Like, how do we actually live humbly? And it gets at what you're asking, Danielle, because it's like, you look at Jesus and go, well, he wasn't a pushover. He didn't let people shove him around. He didn't shrink back from calling people to high standards. He did. So sometimes we think about, we often talk about servant leadership and what does that look like and what does it mean to be, well, you're not a pushover. You don't lower your standards. You don't, like, Jesus didn't do any of those things. I think what it comes down to is the ability to lift others up in importance, like above yourself. And the only way to do that, when you think about how hard that actually is to do in practice, the only way to do that, and not to keep, I mean, we're finding ourselves at the Jesus washing the feet moment again and again. Yeah, that's right. But one of the other, one of the other, I think that moment informs this, because there's this really cool passage in there that says that Jesus knew from whom he had come and knew where he was going. And then he got down and washed his disciples' feet. And it's like, there's a security that comes from having your identity in Christ that allows you to not be intimidated by, not find yourself, feeling insecure about lifting others up above yourself. But that only happens if you know who you are and you know where you're going. That allows you to walk in that actual humility day to day of going, I'm going to see in this moment, here's what I want, but in this moment, I'm going to see your needs as more important than my own. And so I'm going to lift those up.
So I think about it like this as well, like understanding that identity piece, who loves you, who saved you, who has called you into what you've been called to live in a certain way. Like, it just allows you to breathe. I think so much of how we respond to culture around us is out of a fear, is out of a worry, is also, I don't want to use the word anxiousness because I know that that's a loaded term right now, and people do legitimately struggle with anxiety. But there is an anxiousness that when we act out of it, there's a quickness, there's a lack of thoughtfulness in our response, which we often, I think, look back on and regret.
Yeah, you're going for like protection, right? Or like,
Yeah, you can couch it in those very, well, I'm protecting my family, or I need to stand against this person or this thing because and so sometimes that comes in and it feels very justifiable because I'm doing this good thing. But there's a way in which we do that I think points to Jesus.
So you said offensive a couple of times, Stephen, and I think that's probably when I said jarring and the whole, like, I'm not worthy, like, I think culturally offensive, there's so many things that Jesus will do that we'll soon read about, and what John is doing is offensive, but he's not trying to be offensive.
Right.
He's not shying away or shrinking back, but nor is he grabbing the megaphone and standing on a street corner and blasting people. I mean, he's living out his faith and what he's called to do. He's doing it as he's called without trying to be offensive, I guess, but he's not shying away either. And there's just what's the word I'm looking for? Just an authenticity to that I think. So you talk about Christendom today. I guess for me personally and for others and for us, like, I would hope that, like, we're living out we're trying to emulate and be an apprentice of Jesus, doing it authentically, but not trying to do it offensively. Because I think that has hurt us as a Christian church, as a Western church, as an American church, because if we try to go be offensive in the presentation of the gospel in word or deed, that's not how Jesus did it. That's not how John did it. And that creates a fracture. That creates an us versus them. But rather just to live it out, not trying to be offensive, taking the licks when they come, but also just walking in that.
Yeah, I think as you're talking, I think the irony of how the script is flipped, right? Because what was culturally offensive back then was this idea of humbling yourself to wash, the feet of somebody. So that was reserved for the lowest. What is culturally offensive to us now as Christians is the complete opposite of. And so there's this okay, we need to follow in Jesus' footsteps. So how do we flip the script of what we would consider culturally offensive now today? And how do we bring a different cultural offensiveness that people just don't see, that there's no reference for, but people are shocked by?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is the words versus the walk or the behavior. So I think a lot of times, I'll say for the American church anyway, we default to words publicly. We default to declarations and words and lines in the sand and whatever, versus literally living out what we see about Jesus and believe about Jesus publicly.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of it is to go along with that. Part of it is the way to avoid just being a megaphone Christian, where we're just blasting out opinions about everything, is to actually walk with people who are going through whatever our opinions are about. Right. So in other words, if we have a strong feeling about some social issue or some strong feeling about abortion or sexuality and how it's defined or any of those things, instead of just posting about it every other day on social media about how horrible the culture is on this or how horrible the other side is, to actually befriend somebody who is walking through that or who has walked through it. And all of a sudden the words become actions very fast. And I think it's one of the best ways not only to demonstrate humility and to show the other person that they're important to us, but it's also a way to shape our own hearts into having more compassion and more understanding and more, and all of those things breed in us this thing that John and Jesus are calling us to, which is a humble, confessional approach to life. But it's easy to avoid that if we hide behind our keyboards and just make statements and opinions all day.
Right. That's one of the reasons I love this Pray for 8 initiative we're doing. Those of you who are attending, you'll have been through this, but it's also on the website. Having those people physically live around you in your neighborhood, it's so easy to just be behind your keyboard, but also just be in your house or in your yard or on your deck or whatever. The minute you cross that line or they cross that line, suddenly your world just opens up. To even if you have a lot of the same ideals, or whatever, it's still giving you an opportunity to put yourself in a place where you can lift them up. So one super practical example, Dave and I try with this one couple, we try to ask them their opinions about things. We don't prescribe it every time we get together. It's just something he and I talked about. And not even because of this, but now I'm framing it in this. It honestly wasn't the reason. It was just more
You're very spiritual, Danielle. Good job. You're applying
guys, all these. I pre-applied this last week.
I'm taking notes.
Before I even knew about it.
Before it was known.
That's how spiritual you are.
I know, duh.
99.
Yeah, right.
Since 99.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm making it fit, but it is asking them a question, or it was more just a conversation kind of starter thing. But now that I have this framework, I can use it to help encourage them in what they're doing, parenting wise. Is our big connection. But
well, there's a humility in being willing to engage beyond the keyboard or beyond your living room and engage with people walking through that. So if we can wrap this all together, right? There's a humility to actually step out and do that. I might not actually know. And then when you do engage, you get empathy. You get to know someone's story, or the neighbor with the barking dog all the time, won't they just shut that thing up? Well, then if you actually get to know them, actually they're going through some difficult stuff, and they can't get out because who knows? There's 100 reasons why, and now there's empathy there, not judgment and bitterness.
Right.
And now there's a door open to be able to create a relationship. And John didn't go back to like the Holiday Inn and then pop out to the river. Like, he lived in the wilderness with the people. Jesus walked with the people.
Yeah.
I think, so how can we take some of this and apply in our lives? Like, go walk with people in these different arenas, engage with them, gain empathy, hear their story. And it does something to your heart, and it does something to your witness.
It's like I think empathy is the output. I think, but it first starts with the choice of, like, I'm choosing to not be prideful here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to sit behind a keyboard, anybody can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anybody can do it. In fact, everybody does it
That's why,
at some point, right? But the choice to move towards is a choice to put pride aside. And typically the output is empathy eventually, because you get to hear their story, you get to hear their struggle, you get to hear what they're going through. And I just think Jesus is just such a perfect picture of this. There's wisdom in who he confronts. And I think that's very important for us too. And I know, Derek, a few weeks ago in a sermon you talked about, this idea of judging. And I think just as Christians, we get the order wrong, and so we have this tendency to judge a world who has not chosen to subscribe to the teachings of Jesus, or follow him as we have chosen to. And yet we don't judge those in the church, but it's almost like Jesus flips that script too. Right. And so the people that he confronts are the people who have chosen to live such a high standard of life, but are failing to see the plank in their own eye. Yeah. But every time he moves towards somebody who has not subscribed to that, he moves towards them with compassion. Yeah. He sets aside his keyboard, metaphorically, right? Sets aside his keyboard and gets to know the person and understands their story first. And that's shocking. Yeah. It's shocking.
And again, I would just want to say it clearly, and we're all saying it. Yeah. But the choice to forego pride and to take a step to live humbly or whatever. When we even say it that way, it sounds very spiritual, very ethereal, lofty, or whatever. Yeah. But like you're saying, pray for 8 or something like that. And even my next step today, which we may talk about a little later, but it's just like, what is one simple step of obedience that you can take? Like, you can boil it down to, like, for those of you that don't know, this pray for 8 thing is, we're just encouraging our congregation to get to know, to even pray for somebody, you have to know their name. So to get to know the names.
I have a blank square on mine still.
First and last name of the 8 people who live closest to you. So your 8 closest neighbors. And for some people who live out in the country, that may be a big span. For somebody who live in an apartment, it may be a hallway.
Could also be like a work cubicle.
A work cubicle, right? Dormitory. Exactly. If it doesn't, dorm.
Yeah.
So, but my point is that this whole set aside pride and live humbly, the next step of obedience may be as simple as, when I get home from work, I'm not going to close the garage door behind me.
100%.
I'm going to leave it open, and I'm going to walk out into my driveway and see if I notice anybody walking out. I mean, it could be as simple as that.
But that's so hard.
So hard, right?
That's so difficult.
Or it could be, I'm going to sit on the front porch instead of the back porch tonight.
Yep.
And the people that walk by on the sidewalk, I'm going to say hello, or whatever it is. So I just want to take it out of the lofty and go.
What is the next right thing?
Just a little decision to go, I'm going to put myself out. I know one for me over the years has been, because we all want to just be sustaining. The ability to go to a neighbor and say, could I borrow a tool that I don't have?
You've got like 8 wrenches. You're like, can I borrow a wrench?
But it puts you in the posture of needing something. Yeah. So, and again, as Christians, I think we're always seen as the ones provide. We're trying to get you to do something different or whatever. And when you just, again, flip the script and go, actually, I need something from you. You put yourself in kind of this humble position. I don't have one. Could I borrow yours? Opens up a whole. It kind of puts them in the higher position of having something I don't have, and then they're allowing me to. I don't know. It's a goofy little thing, but I'm saying a lot of this
so practical
starts with goofy little things.
It's really practical, but it's like as you
do.
say that, that's my worst.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're shaking on the end.
I am. I'm like, my palms are sweating.
You would drive down to the hardware, 20 minutes round trip, spend $20 to get that wrench.
Yeah, you would.
My wife will confirm. My neighbor next door, I mean, he has every tool under the sun, and he is the most gentle, awesome individual. He will give you anything, but I will never ask for a single thing.
Well, we know Steven's next small step.
Yep.
That's
So what do I need to ask for?
Chicken coop, chickster.
We have lots here. We have lots of needs. We have lots of needs.
But
many things to choose from.
It's funny though that you're saying that. Like, all of these on paper are just like, leave the garage door open. Take them a meal.
Not easy.
Especially in the culture we've built around, and I'm not going to blame COVID for this, but I think it locked the doors big time. Like, oh, I love my house. I love being in here. Everything's perfect. You have your work set up now. You have everything in there. But we've got to talk to people. We have to talk to humans that we aren't related to. And for those of you who just have cats or dogs, you can start talking to people.
This means you too.
Ask, when Sarah comes back next week, she can tell you how to pet a dog. You can go ask to pet a dog. You got to do this stuff. We got to do it. It's crazy. Okay, another thing I want to talk about is this wilderness moment that you got to in your sermon. You're saying kind of like I'm putting it in my own words. Wilderness is a good place to meet with God. So we're talking about wilderness. Let's talk about what's wilderness? Let's just talk about that. And maybe we can do a little talk about John the Baptist too.
Well, the way I framed it is it's really this, it is through Scripture a real metaphor for struggle, idolatry, wandering. It's a hard place. But it's also a place where you see regularly it's where people meet with God. And it's because it's where our self-sufficiency, which we're just talking about, comes to an end. And we realize, oh, wow, there's nothing to drink. Right. Look at that rock over there. Maybe God needs to provide me water from that rock. Right. There's nothing to eat. Oh, maybe God needs to provide me manna from heaven. And so there's this whole, the desert is where, the wilderness is where we run out of ourself and realize my only hope is God. And it happens in Scripture, but I think it happens metaphorically with us too. So I don't know if you guys have had any wilderness moments, but that's kind of the framework of the message that I talked about.
Yeah, St. John of the Cross talks about this concept of dark night of the soul. Yeah. And back in 2021, because it started in 22. So back in 2021, my wife and I was in the Marines for 7 years. So we bounced all over the place. We finally settled up here in Erie. We're trying to get close to my wife's family in Buffalo, and we missed. So we're here in Erie.
By 2 hours.
By 2 hours. Close, but not close enough.
A sarcastic snap.
Perfect distance.
Just perfect distance. Love you guys.
Sorry, Em.
But so we got settled. COVID was still a thing. We were having trouble making friends. All of a sudden, the job that I was in, I wasn't super fulfilled in. And it just seemed like I started progressing into the wilderness. We had to put my dog down. I got COVID. We had a kitchen remodel that just went months too long. And that sounds dumb, but when you start compounding these things, even when I think the straw that broke the camel's back, not much of a straw, was watching the Afghanistan withdrawal, a country that I deployed to and invested time in, and to watch that kind of unravel. And I didn't realize how much that actually affected me. And so you compound all of that. And Emily was pregnant with our second daughter, and we had a baby, and it was the driest, darkest spiritual season of my life. And it sucked. But coming on the other end of that, though, and from there is where Scott and I really started to have good talks and started to clarify this calling to ministry. It's when watching God resolve some family issues that were happening. I can look back on that now, and I can see where where God gave me water out of that rock, and where He provided for me, and it's set that foundation of faith in where I've seen God move, gratitude for I've seen God move in the past, and it sets the foundation for faith for where I know He can move and provide in the future. And so, not that everybody goes through the dark night of the soul and finds themselves in vocational ministry, but some of those darkest moments where God shows up the clearest and can just like trajectory altering spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If I had to equate a season of my life to wilderness, 2021 sucked.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
For me, it's similar in the sense that I can identify two areas in my life, and they're both surrounded by moves. So the first one is moving from Scotland. I was 21. I still remember giving my mom a hug, and I mean, I'd walked that airport terminal before, but for whatever reason, it turned into 5 miles. It felt like, and I could just see her, tears in her eyes, watching her son walk, tears in my eyes. It was like every time I looked back, she was still there. It's like, get going. But then you come, you leave that which is familiar. And then you come to a place that you have no point of reference. So here I was as this, I like to call myself a city boy growing up. And I moved into the middle of nowhere. Like people in Western New York didn't even know where Wilson was when I moved there. That's how small Wilson was. And I lived in a converted chicken coop when I moved here.
Oh, wow.
And here I was just like, thinking I'm this.
Together.
Yeah, it is.
It's coming together. Thinking I'm this big, hotshot city boy. And then I moved to the middle of nowhere with no point of reference at all. And I'm now stepping into this youth pastor role. I understood, I grew up in the church, so I understood Christian leadership, but with no point of reference, no support system around me. And so everything that was familiar, I just felt like I was in the middle of a wilderness. And then that second one was really the move from that place that had become home.
Sure.
So 21, all through my 20s until, my mid-30s. So these people had become family because they had, helped me meet my wife and watched us date. And then we got married and then we had kids. And, this church that surrounded me really became my family. And then here we were again, uprooting, leaving our family behind and moving. Granted, we're down in Erie, so it's only 2 hours away and we see these people. But again, it was this leaving that which was familiar and stepping into the wilderness. But to Mike's point, so grateful that those seasons happened because you learn the deficiencies of your soul, if you will, and then God meets you right there. And so where there is no spring to drink from anymore, God becomes your source.
Yeah.
And it's just, it has been a beautiful journey, really, really difficult. But on the backside of those moments, I wouldn't trade them.
Yeah,
you wouldn't trade them.
Yeah.
And I think what people need to know is that, we've all been in a conversation here for the last few months with some folks that are helping us to dream about the future at Grace, and they talk about this discipleship dip. That when you follow Jesus, we all go through these dips at time where you find yourself in a place where it's like, I don't know how to follow him right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have the tools, I don't have the experience, I don't have this, I don't know what this looks like. All I know is it feels like he's not here anymore. And that's the dark night of the soul. It's these moments. And I think that it's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to do this together with other people. I know we've all had people that have kind of stepped in during those times and showed us the way or reminded us of the character of God or what he's like. And I think about even the Israelites who were in their own wilderness wanderings for a long time. Well, that's where there was the cloud by day and the fire by night. And I think about that and just go, God wasn't really necessarily speaking to them in that way. He was just showing them his movements and his rhythms and giving them a sense of, I'm not speaking right now, but I'm still moving. And if I'm here, and if you'll just move with me, this is going to all make sense someday. And I think it's important, even just for people to know who may be new to Christianity, who may be considering Christianity, that this isn't this isn't rainbows and gumdrops all the time. There are very difficult moments, but I believe our faith makes sense of that. All of humanity experiences that.
Yeah.
I believe our faith makes sense of it better than any other worldview.
Yeah.
And so our God can be trusted.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's this destination motif that's so strong in our world. Like we just want to get there.
Just get there. Yeah.
But do we ever really?
Right.
And we keep chasing and we keep chasing and we keep chasing. If only I had, if only then. And I just don't, our God is not a God of destination.
Yeah.
When he created the world, it said that he dwelt with. And so there's this being reality. There's this presence reality. We messed it up. We turned our back on him. But God desires to be with these people. And so there's just this, I think the moment that we can embrace the journey and know that, yeah, sure, there's decisions along the way, and those are important, but we have a God who sent his son to save us so that he could be with us again. And just when we can embrace that God is on the journey with us, or God has invited us into his story, and we now get to play the part that we were made to play the whole time, and enjoy it along the way.
And those wilderness moments, in addition to having retrospective thought on your own personal life, it sets you up to tell that better story to someone else. You're telling Jesus' story in a better way because of what you've been through, because of what we've all been through.
I mean, Steve and I,
right here,
exactly, we're
perfect.
able to honor God with our stories, and that the destination thing, right? I'm a guy. Screw the drive. Let's just get there, right? Let's drive through the night. And Emily,
don't ask for directions either.
No, you just go, right? Because I would never want to roll the window down.
You have to pee. There's a cup in the back.
Okay, we literally have a portable potty.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Nah.
My wife bought it too. I didn't buy it.
100%.
Oh my gosh! I married someone who has wanderlust, so it's like, a bridge. So
you guys familiar with the term Gardy Lou? Gardy Lou?
No,
it's a Scottish. That's what they Gardy Lou, and then they would toss out the window.
Toss a what out the window?
Well, just use your imagination.
I need you to tell me what they're tossing out the window.
Is there a limitation culturally to what's allowed to be tossed
when
out?
the infrastructure was not in place in houses?
Is it there now?
That is what they
Scotland?
would.
What's the word? Say it.
Gardy Lou.
And you're tossing it out the window.
Like if Scottish people are listening to this, are they going to be offended that you're saying this word?
No, they'll probably laugh.
It's kind of like a heads up.
So it's like a
we're offended by everything.
L-O-O, like the Lou.
Don't ask me how to spell it.
Oh, sorry. Put you into another dark night of the
now
soul.
I'm picturing Steven.
Spelling bees.
Gardy Lou.
Gardy Lou.
On the way to Buffalo to visit his family.
You're welcome. That one was for free, by the way.
I'm going to use that. Don't even worry about it.
When are you going to
be
use
assured
it?
Mike is going to use it.
He's going to mess it up.
If I know you.
And now I'm picturing Steven just walking on the streets of Scott like,
Ew.
That's why they would yell.
Bicyclists.
Now, listen, we're talking, 1800s.
No, we're talking last week.
No, we are not.
But that's why they would yell, so you would get out of the road. Yeah.
Nice.
Gardy Lou.
It was you're welcome. Here it comes.
Well, maybe we'll use it. Okay.
That's my thing for today.
Okay, good.
Main takeaway from today's
100%.
What's your next step?
Next step. Use Gardy Lou on my next vacation.
Not to ask, but why did you bring that up?
Because I talked about throwing pee out the window.
Throwing pee out the window. Oh, traveling.
Yeah, and then I envisioned them
journey.
like throwing
I
it
didn't
out.
take us there.
Right.
It was actually you two. That's pretty good for me.
But it did have to do with the bathroom thing. Okay, we're near our time. Other than Gardy Lou, any final
next
thoughts?
steps?
Any final thoughts before I give the next steps? I am scared to. I'm not opening it up. Okay.
Take us there.
Yeah. So again, you guys can go to whoisgrace.com/Mark. In addition to the resources there, you can submit questions to us that we can use in these discussions. So please feel free to do that. Next week, we're going to be covering Mark 1:9-13. So if you want to kind of pre-read that, you can do that as well. We, as we said last week, we want to give you a next step every single time. So this week is just that question that Pastor Derek alluded to. What is my next small step of obedience today? Ask that of yourself, or another, what is the next right thing I need to do? Something along those lines. And that goes with our theme that we come up to. I'll let you talk about that, our Ordinary Heroes theme. Why don't you give it a quick.
Sure. So we talk about 4 themes that kind of emerge again and again through the Gospel of Mark. And actually, there's 2 that kind of go together. It's discipleship failure and ordinary heroes, because Mark often does it. I'm convinced on purpose.
Sure.
That we see the disciples failing. We see them not getting it. We see Jesus getting almost frustrated with them. Where is your faith? Like, what? Didn't we just go over this?
Yeah.
And then like the next passage will be some no-name random character in the story totally getting it.
Killing it, yeah.
Just killing it. Like, they get who Jesus is. They have incredible faith. They believe in him, and they are kind of showing us what it looks like to follow Jesus. And that is so comforting to us because, you know, it's the little people. It's the common people. It's the one, and it shows that we can all follow Jesus.
Right.
And so anyway, the ordinary hero theme is the theme for this week because John the Baptist is one of those characters where he's a nobody. He grew up kind of a nobody, and he's the one that is kind of the prophet in the form of Elijah that gets to announce the coming kingdom. And so whenever these themes come up, we've got a cool spot over on the website where we've got the themes listed. But then a tool that we want to provide everybody is that there's a discipleship question or a prompt that's associated with that theme that people can then take action on.
That's good. And as a reminder, you said this in your sermon too, but as a reminder, the goal of discipleship is not only be like Jesus, it's be like Jesus if Jesus was you in your own life. So this is a great practical way to do that. What is my next small step of obedience today? Could be, maybe it's taking the pray for 8 things seriously. Maybe it's reading Mark. Maybe it's leaving your garage door open, going on one less shopping trip, whatever.
Maybe it's Tally Ho, or what was the
Ginger Lou?
Jerry Lou.
Heads up.
Ginger Lou.
Unless you don't have plumbing in your house.
What's that?
You want to be good to your neighbors.
Oh gosh. Oh, Guardy
You
Lou.
lived in a chicken coop, apparently, so.
I'm calling it Tally Ho, by the way. I'm assuming that's something different.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. It's something with a horse. Isn't it? Tally ho?
I don't know, Daniel.
It's from Mary Poppins. I know that one.
So my small step is going to be
Go for it. Yeah.
is going to be asking.
Asking for ask for help.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So
That
ask
is
me,
a really
ask
good
me
one.
next week.
Yeah.
I will ask
your
you.
friend with all the tools. You got to go.
It's good.
That's a good one.
Good
Ask
for
him
you.
to use your bathroom.
Guardy Lou.
That's too uncomfortable for me.
No,
It's
just
hard,
go
hard
all
enough
the
to
way.
ask for some garden
That's a
shoes.
bigger
Rip
step.
off the Band-Aid. Okay, we'll just let this devolve into chaos. Thank you for listening. Whoisgrace.com/Mark, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Right?